Yo, dog, Kenny Boucher here, Next Level Painting, hitting you up on the literal best of all days, coming to you from the Beats Lab in Hollywood, California. We're doing it again with a fresh Eldar style tutorial. We're gonna paint them runes glowing. Now, we worked on this guy a little bit on Twitch, but I thought I'd take a quick stop in the whole process and show you guys a quick, simple way to do some glowing rune effects. The first thing I'm gonna do is just start tracing out these lines with a kind of an ivory or off-white, keeping it kind of loose, kind of moist, and just rough it in. Treat this mechanically as a pre-highlight or a pre-shade, right? We're gonna lay down the final glow over it, okay? So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it is important not to go on thick and texture it out by accident. It's thin, it's glazy, it's a little streaky. That is totally fine. Let it be a little transparent, not opaque, and just build it up. Tracing them runes. This works on a lot of these new GW models that have three-dimensional stuff. Now we're gonna jump right into this D&D green flame color made by the Army Painter. Love this color. Now we're gonna thin it down with a bunch of Vallejo Flow Improver. Get it super thin. We're gonna use it as a glaze, in which we're gonna apply it very thin, several thin coats, and we're gonna let whatever colors are already on the model show through and start to tint this thing. And this is where you can start to see that, like, this rune that we painted, we sketched in these off whites, is the pre-highlight. So I'm using that Creos from Mr. Hobby. I turned down the little regulator nozzle. We got very little PSI coming through here, and we're just slowly nurturing it, building it up, taking our time. Let it dry a little bit, throw on a second pass, let it glow. And you're gonna start to see our white lines are gonna be the epicenter of the glow. Now, a lot of times we use green, we highlight it with yellow, and I love that. It's one of the most vibrant ways to do it. But I'm looking for that hotness. Like it's so bright, it's ridiculous. Like, it's glowing so bright, you're almost blinded when you're looking into the center of it. And that's gonna be this off-white, these ivories. That's a pro tip. Sometimes, you know, you think that you're gonna grab white and it always makes the shit look garbage. An off-white will usually serve your purpose there. Now we're just gonna, like, take our time, nurture it, like I said, build it up, make it look beautiful. And I've been doing a lot with these Army Painter paints. Army Painter makes a lot of paints for a lot of people. We actually painted all his reds and his purples with their color match set, hilariously. Now we're gonna jump into this green emerald color, and we're going to kind of trace the perimeter, the border of this with another glaze. And this is like, the further from the epicenter the light source is, the darker it becomes. Now, a lot of times you would just lay down the dark color, work in the bright color, and go that direction. Well, glazing, you can go any direction you want. For this technique, I like to bring in the dark at the end, especially if you can maintain a little bit of control with the airbrush. You can just build that border, that perimeter around what you've done, and let it blend in naturally with what you already laid down. It will give it that next level, that next tier. A lot of people, they stop once they get the base of the OSL down. It's a little monochromatic when you do it that way. You want to bring this extra hue in. Now look, while everything is drying, we're gonna pull out a small little detail brush, go back to the ivory, and just gonna lightly trace some of this off-white over the rune. Just kind of in the center, not gonna retrace everything we just did or from our pre-highlight stage that creates those glows. I just wanna make sure, kind of in the center where I've decided it's glowing the brightest, it's just a little sharper, it's a little whiter. And that's part of the trick too. And this isn't a very difficult workup. You can do this with anything, super easy. And you don't even need to use an airbrush, guys. We just go on super thin with the airbrush. You can go super thin with the paintbrush. And I'll show you that here in a second too. So we're gonna go up to the head. It's a little bit less pronounced there. We're gonna just take our time, get those lines looking straight. Try to pull them down to me when I can. Try to avoid left and right motions, but sometimes it's unavoidable and you gotta do it. But for the most part, if you move the model and you just kind of moving your hand mostly the same direction, you're gonna get the best, cleanest, sharpest results. I like to brace multiple points of power. You see, I like to lay my pinky on the model, kind of connect it to my other hand, stay really stable. All the tricks of the trade right there. Kind of just even leaning the model over on my wrist. Just whatever you can get away with, you know? So as we move on with this project, you can see he's looking real good. He's looking real bright. It's already channeling the effect I want. but I want to do a little bit more. I want to sling some more of the OSL in there. I want it to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to take this opportunity to sharpen up the border of this like chest panel. Give it some new sharp angles. That's a little bit more of that ivory. Just cling. Because sometimes it helps to just frame it. It makes it a little sharper, you know. It helps you know where you want to go with the model. So, you know, take a break. Let some of that stuff dry. Frame it out a little bit so you know what you're getting. Also gives you a break from monotony when you're balls deep in a project. So here's that initial dark green. We're gonna get it really loose. That's the airbrush mix. We're gonna dry off some of the excess moisture on a paper towel. It's a glaze, okay? We've thinned it down with moisture and then we've removed excess moisture, so all that is left is very thin pigment. And I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. You don't really need the airbrush if you don't want it. We're gonna just lightly glaze in some of that green and really just control perfectly how it plays off the brighter green. And this is crucial. Use very light brush pressure, make very minimalistic strokes, go in any direction you deem fit. Don't be afraid to dab it on or stab it in versus like drawing lines all the time. But if you just take your time, exercise light brush pressure, cannot emphasize that part enough, you will get pretty smooth transitions, very similar to what an airbrush can do. You can do almost anything with a paintbrush that an airbrush does. So I like to use the airbrush because it's a tool in my toolbox. It saves time. We laid the foundation of everything simply by virtue of its existence and our knowledge and how to work it mechanically. And now we can work off of that, get to the fun parts of the model faster. So never forget, your airbrush at any time is useful. Learn how to use it. We got tons of videos here on the platform all day, every day. So now we're going to switch over to that flame green, that brighter green, same deal, super thin. That's the airbrush mix. It's thin with liquid. We're going to pull some of the excess liquid off of it. So just that thin pigment is left behind. And we're going to use this, getting deeper in the rune, closer to that white epicenter, and just going to lay some nice lines down, get some more of the interplay. So we have a nice subtle transition between essentially white, bright green, and dark green, giving us the full effect that we're looking for. You know, we're feeling good here. So we're going to jump on some of the other runes on them. We'll go back to the dark green, thin it up like we've been doing. Let's just paint in some fuzz, okay? I'm going to show you how you don't need the airbrush for every part of it. Do it thin, light brush pressure, as I said, cannot be emphasized enough here. Also, patient. When you're not using the airbrush and you're leaning on the paintbrush, got to exercise a degree of patience, got to let it dry fully before you continue to fuck with it or manipulate it. It will peel up on you. You'll reactivate paint. That's a nightmare. While that's drying, we're going to just sneak some into the eyes. Start slinging some light, essentially like that's further from the epicenter, where we decided it's the darker green. We're just going to start taking some artistic liberty here. Like, you know, his eye, kind of the sides of his head. Start building it up. Keep it thin. Light brush pressure. Lay it up. You know, go nuts. Be brave in the beat slab. But I can say this. It is really easy to overdo an OSL style effect, especially with an airbrush. If you come in with the airbrush and you go on a little too opaque, it will look really fancy and shiny, and I love that too, but it won't have the bonus of looking like it's glowing if you can't see some of the underlying colors poking through. Some of these glazes we're doing, as you can see right now, are kind of like a filter. They're a lens above the source material. So you should see some interplay between the color below it and the color above it. Now in his chest piece, we decided that whole thing is glowing, right? But you can see on his head, you can see all sorts of the red and purples poking through, the greens. We're just gonna take some more freedom. We're gonna just drag some of these colors down his belly. He's weird. This is that like AOS fake avatar. Love this model. Come at me, bruh. Love that stance. Just work it up. Find excuses to be patient by keep continuing to paint more green in the model so we can eventually come back to the initial runes we were working on his knee. I'll show you guys here. It's too easy. You know, you do a couple passes, you know, every time it dries, reinforce it, lay it on again, let it really start to glow. Then you got to know when to stop, when it looks good, when it's right at that precipice of like opacity and transparency, right where it needs to be. Don't be afraid to push it a little bit. This is all art. So now we're going to switch it up. We're going to go bright now. Pull out the little brush, dragging a little bit of that ivory into the center of those runes on his knee. And we're going to get a very similar effect to what we did up on top but a little bit more subtle. There it is. Painting them Eldar runes. Get that awakening. Call them in. And you can, at any point, if you feel like any of this is too much, you just go back a step. Go back to the green. Just glaze it back in. Mute it down. Bring the lens in that I discussed. How it's all like a filter. As I'm going to show you right here. Just throw some of that filter back over it. It'll knock it down. Send it to a layer behind, essentially. This works really good with lightning effects, too. There it is. A little bit of that green in there. Just push it down. Beautiful. OSL can be made easy once you understand some of the techniques to deploy. We're going to keep pushing with this guy live on Twitch. Don't miss the show, guys. We do it every Tuesday, every Friday. And let me shout out the new swag shop. We're laying designs down on the daily. Now we have jerseys. We've got all the heretical legions in the swag shop. We got the Plague Legion, the War Legion, the Excess Legion, and the Chain Legion. And as of this video's upload, it's not in here, but I did finish the Change Demon. Anyway, guys, play on, players.